Hey y'all, I'm Josh from Louisiana, and I want to thank you for tuning in to episode 2 of my recap of Feud, Capote versus the Swans. Regardless of whether or not you celebrate, happy Mardi Gras! Truly, there couldn't have been a better episode for this week's recap. In Masquerade 1966, we've got mistresses, foreclosures, and a party with 540 of Truman Capote's closest friends. Now, as a reminder to everyone, this is a recap in which I will be going through all of the events of the episode. So if you haven't watched yet, be aware that there are spoilers ahead. Hope y'all enjoy. Now let's dive in. Episode 3 opens with a different style than its predecessors in a black and white documentary style and carried on that way until about the last 10 minutes of the episode. While it was a unique choice and on the nose for the masquerade known as the black and white ball, one of the things I did miss was seeing all of the beautiful details and colors, especially when it came to the ball. Although it is understandable given the direction in which they were going. For all of my Housewives fans, it really played into the tagline that we've seen all over the advertisements, hailing the Swans as the original Housewives. A little side note, this documentary, it never existed, though it did make for a great episode. There was, however, a documentary that Capote did with the Maisel brothers called With Love from Truman that was more so about Capote's life and career and less about his relationships with his swans. But I did love that we had confessional looks and little vignettes of drama that made me feel as though we were taking a peek at those women's lives through a 60s style Bravo lens. In the first scene, we have our besties Truman and Babe looking at art and also educating me on the artists Monet versus Manet. As naive as I may be, I had never heard of Edouard Manet, but he was apparently an artist that came before and inspired some of the works of Claude Monet. So there's your history lesson for the day. What struck me, however, was seeing the relationship of Babe and Truman, and it's sad to know how terribly it all would end. Clearly enamored with each other, they spoke almost as if they were in less of a friendship and more of a romantic relationship, which, as you may recall at the demise of their relationship, would come to a crushing end with Babe saying that he would not be her second husband again. But for an hour on Wednesday, we saw the life and love that they both shared. Babe even says, "I love you because you're easy to catch on. I think it's important to find something admirable about someone to love them unconditionally. You are loyal and can be called upon in any circumstance." To which Truman responds, "For me, you are just the beginning and the end, the absolute center of my world." Seeing the earlier days of their relationship like this leads me to believe that Truman really did love Babe and really did value her. I just think that the crushing weight of having to pay back $400,000 had him scrambling, and he did what he could to stay afloat. Not an excuse, just an explanation, because exposing their lives the way that he did without their permission was absolutely unforgivable. In the first spark of the episode, Truman mentions that he will be throwing a mass ball for all the most important people in the world. As far from Monroeville, Alabama as you can get, baby. The ballroom at the Plaza Hotel. And he mentions that he will be having a guest of honor that will be mentioned at the right moment. Of course, you could see the looks on the ladies' faces as soon as he said that, all expecting it to be them. Cut to our first confessional look with Slim mentioning that it's obvious who he's going to ask, as they had all made New York the center of the world. And who is at the center of that center, she asked, alluding to herself. And we begin to see just how much each of these women really cared for their relationships with Truman, and each wanted to be his #1 swan. We're then followed by Babe and her confessional. The interviewer says, "There seems to be a natural connection between women and gay men. Why do you think that is?" To which she responds, "We see the importance of presentation. That's how we defend ourselves. Underneath, though, is someone who is just trying to control their environment. It's a defense." Okay, relatable. He continues on to ask if she thinks she will be the guest of honor. And while you can see on her face that that is exactly what she was expecting, she says, "I don't need an honorary ball to know that Truman and I have a singular bond. It's something every woman deserves. To be made to feel like the most important person in the world by a man who truly loves her. Of course, in my marriage, I feel that way too." Which was a bit of foreshadowing on the scenes to come. But I do have to say that Babe's explanation of the connection between women and gay men seemed pretty spot on, especially the importance of presentation and feeling in control of our environment. I know for myself, when I'm having a rough day, I put on that happy face, fix my hair, and present myself to the world that everything is just peachy. Or I'll reorganize my apartment, so I'm really in control of my environment. As Truman and Babe are reviewing the setup for the anticipated ball, they are greeted by the hotel manager and a woman named Lisa who are helping organize the party. Immediately, you can see that Babe is put off by the mere presence of this woman and excuses herself. Come to find out, Lisa was Bill Paley's latest piece of East Side ass. Truman runs after an inconsolable Babe, and we find out that Bill had actually gotten the woman Lisa pregnant. We then shift immediately to the next scene at Bill and Babe's house, where you can hear arguing in the other room from the couple as Truman sifts through invitation options. At first, it seemed that Truman felt like an embarrassed child listening to his parents until he gave the cameraman a look that said to keep going. That is until Babe put a swift end to it. Next, in a frantic call from CZ, Truman learns that the IRS is seizing her belongings. Telling her to pour a 3-finger malt and he would be there by the 3rd, Truman rushes to CZ's side, going in to swoop in and fix it, as he does. I did some research and couldn't find anything to confirm that this actually happened, but it sure did make for a good scene played fabulously by Chloe Sevigny. In an attempt to console her, Truman tells her in so many words that she is going to be his guest of honor. When approached by the filmmakers, Truman tells them that he only intimated that she would be the guest of honor. And now he has to figure out a way to tell the others because he loves them, but they frighten him. Which honestly is hilarious considering that he would eventually come to expose their entire lives, invoking the wrath of the women, and eventually being a victim of societal murder. On to who I consider the HBIC Slim. I absolutely adore her. I feel as though she's the strongest of all the Swans and really puts up with no shit. Truman meets with her to cross guests off the list as she has her fitting for the ball at which she believes that she will be the guest of honor. When Truman mentions inviting Yul Brynner, he is met with a swift and unyielding no from Slim, who says that Yul had exposed himself to her at Bimmelman's. Okay. She jokingly says that if he invites him, he will be ostracized from high society, which she knows will absolutely kill him. But the jokes would not last long when Slim found out that Truman invited Pamela Harriman, who stole Slim's husband. Because of course he did. According to Vanity Fair, Slim's wasn't the only husband that Pamela had a tryst with. Apparently, she also had Bill Paley in her little black book. Shocking. In an argument that led to a disheveled Slim, Truman flitted out telling her to get herself together with no remorse for doing what he had done. In her following confessional, Slim says that Truman asked her to be the guest of honor. Sort of an olive branch sort of thing. Truman Capote, the man of overpromising and under-delivering. And I have to say, at first I thought that perhaps Truman had invited Pamela without thinking. I know, how stupid of me. But of course he had to have invited her knowing that there would be drama that would keep the party interesting. In a shocking turn of events, the guest of honor turned out to be none of the Swans, but instead a relative outsider, Mrs. Catherine K. Graham. As Truman and Kay stood greeting guests, Truman tells the camera that not only was Kay beauty and brains, she was one of the bravest women he knew because, and get this, her husband killed himself with a shotgun, which he said directly to camera, and she went on to care for her family and run the Washington Post. I mean, you just gotta love how this man sprinkles sugar on top of the cyanide that he's shoving down people's throats. Then, in the waspiest showdown I've seen in quite some time, Slim comes face to face with good old Pamela. Through gritted teeth and fake laughs, they poke and prod at each other. Slim telling Pamela to stop complaining about the food, Pamela telling Slim not to cause a scene, telling people that she stole her man, and going further to tell her that if she wanted to keep her man, she shouldn't have left him unattended. Bitch. But Slim slaps back with a, no one is as familiar with the ceilings of men's bedrooms as you are, dear. Gotta love a fight with manners. In the most thrilling part of the ball, Anne crashes. Truman, glee-ridden with excitement at the drama and opportunity to shun someone, immediately runs to personally kick Anne out. and pleaded with Truman to stay, claiming that there were at least a dozen people who were crashing, to which Truman responded that at least he liked them. Anne warned Truman that his actions would come back to bite him and that one day he would know just how she was feeling, hurling his own words back at him. The only unforgivable sin is deliberate cruelty. To which Truman bites back that she is a murderess and a lousy mother, just like his mother was. The lousy mother part, not the murderous part. All I have to say is never call a gay man the F-slur, because you never know when you'll come up against a Truman Capote that'll start telling the world that you murdered someone. The party culminates with a drunken Truman angry that Jack was dancing with his swans and offending Joanne Carson, telling her that her husband was probably fingering a coat check girl. Jack steps in an attempt to defuse the situation, but Truman was having none of it. He all but told Jack to get out. And Jack, annoyed, tells the camera that they were at the greatest party in the world. The only catch is, you have to actually pretend to like Truman. As Truman dances alone in the middle of everyone, Lee watches on. In the first real one-on-one we get with Lee, she is obviously bothered, not so much that she wasn't the guest of honor, but the fact that Truman had promised it to so many of his swans. Here it appears that she's beginning to see the cracks in his loyalty. She believes that Truman takes advantage of women, disarming them by making them believe that each of them are his best friend. To be a woman is to be on a limb alone. Even your sister will steal your man, she said. A little background on that. Allegedly, Lee had an affair with President John F. Kennedy, which caused a rift between Lee and her sister Jackie O. And years later, Jackie O would marry the man that Lee was in love with, Aristotle Onassis. You know, maybe the next feud should be Lee versus Jackie. I mean, I would watch the hell out of that. I'm just obsessed with this era and Callista Flockhart in this character. So bring Callista Flockhart back. In our final scene, we're graced once again by the queen, Jessica Lange. And I have to say, I just love how they weave her in as that mirror that Truman holds up to himself. He tells her that he wasn't sure if she got his invitation, to which she responds, "Why would I miss the pinnacle of your existence?" Cutthroat. Truman then starts dancing with her vision, what he was doing in that earlier scene where Lee was looking at him with that serious, what the fuck face, and tells her there is only one true guest of honor. "I don't know if I ever told you this, Mama, but you are my best friend." And that's all of episode 3, y'all. Man, I am just loving this show. I'm really loving your comments and want to hear all your thoughts on last week's episode. I could have gone on and picked apart every single scene, but I don't think anybody's sitting around for 2 hours to listen to me dissect every single moment. But what were some of your favorite scenes? Is there anything that I missed? I'm sure that there was a lot in this. But please put it down in the comments below. And be sure to tune in tomorrow night for episode 4, It's Impossible, so we can discuss next week. If you like this recap, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at JoshFromLouisiana for more updates and fun content. Have a great week, y'all, and happy Mardi Gras.